All right, y'all. Welcome back to the Who's Right podcast. And here we are, guys. We're back just from a little bit of a break, over the holidays. And we actually took an extra week just to, just to get going. Obviously, nothing much has happened, but, we wanted to get back in the swing of things and get back to it. We had this Sean Mania press conference today, but before we get into all of that, remember to subscribe to the channel, like this video, let us know how you're feeling, give us your comments, and Victor, how you doing?
Doing great. New year, new me, ready to go for this new year. I know the Mets are ready to go. Exciting stuff happening this year. A lot of expectations for this Mets team to perform. And if it's anything like last year, we're in for a good year. But it's starting off slow. Not much has happened so far. I know that negotiations have kind of been in a stalemate between Pete Alonso and the Mets, and so things are slowly going right now, but hopefully things are going to start picking up within the next couple of months. Because guess what? In just a month, pitchers and catchers report, and we're getting closer and closer to baseball being back, baby.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Where pitchers and catchers are going to report, just about a little over 4 weeks from now, and I'm excited to get this going. But I'm also excited to finish up this roster. We want to get this roster going, but obviously the news came down today that. Roki Sasaki is not, kind of took us out of the running, took the Mets out of the running. A few teams got taken out, Giants, Yankees. We got taken out. I guess Rangers got taken out. But Dodgers, Padres, and Blue Jays, maybe the Mariners are the only ones left. And then there was another video of Sasaki working out with the Padres at Petco Park. And so it looks like it's going to be the Padres. In a way, it stinks, but it's also a relief that's not the Dodgers, right? Because we were kind of all getting tired of that. Yeah, we lost out on Sasaki. What you feeling?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a bummer. But at the end of the day, like you said, just glad it's not the Dodgers. I mean, he probably looked at their team and saw that there was nowhere for him to fit in that rotation in the next 5 to 10 years, and so he found a fit for himself in the Padres. And some may say that's the second best team in the National League uh, West right now. They're competing with the Dodgers, the Diamondbacks, the Giants are starting to try to pick up. So it's a competitive league, but at the end of the day, those Japanese guys like to be on the West Coast. So we had our name in the hat. We can't say we didn't try, but it does sting a little bit, and it does kind of feel like it leaves a hole for us to fill this rotation spot. We still need an ace at the top of our rotation. We thought Sasaki was that last piece. We didn't think Mania was going to be that guy that filled out our rotation. And we have a lot of depth right now, but it seems like we don't have that top guy. So Sasaki not choosing the Mets kind of hurts a little bit. But, um, you know, like you said, there's still moves to be made.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's a lot of moves to be made, but the question is, will that be in the starting rotation? Did Stearns already know that Sasaki was going to be signing with a West Coast team? And because if he already kind of had that feeling, does that mean that he wanted to? Maybe go on to the season with what we got when it comes to the starting rotation, right? Because if he had a feeling that Sasaki was going to do a West Coast signing, that means that Luis Castillo was out there. A couple other trades, Montgomery, if some people like that, was out there, and he hasn't pulled the trigger on those. So I'm wondering at this point, is he comfortable with the starting rotation with a Mania, Senga, Peterson, Montas, McGill, Blackburn, Holmes, kind of rotation, and maybe banking on a guy like Sproat coming up later on, or maybe picking up a rotation piece down at the trade deadline. I'm thinking that we're actually done as far as a starting rotation is concerned.
That's what it seems like. There are some names still out there on the trade market, but everyone in the free agent market has been kind of sucked up as far as aces go. Corbin Burns was that last piece to drop, and we didn't even have our name in the hat in that one. It seemed like he was going to Arizona as long as they gave him a good deal, and that's what happened. And so there's not much for us to do when it comes to filling out the rest of our starting rotation. David Stearns has added a lot of depth with those kind of mid rotation guys, and what worked last year is what he hopes will work this year. He's kind of set us up to win games, to have pitchers that are able to go out there and be competitive, but not a guy that is going to be able to be a stopgap every time he's out there. And that's the philosophy he goes by, right? He expects these pitchers to be hot and cold, and so um, sometimes Mania is going to be the ace, sometimes Senga is going to be the ace, and sometimes Peterson's going to be the ace, depending on the time of the season. But I don't think that means that we're done necessarily. And you hinted at it going into later in the year, because we don't have that real ace that we are comfortable in putting in that game one, game three situation, elimination game guy. And that's the guy that we're going to have to pick up towards that trade deadline. Ryan Finkelstein on the Lockdown Mets podcast pointed out a good trade acquisition that is that we can look forward to in the trade deadline, and Sandy Alcantara. But that's saying that we want to see where our rotation's at going into this year. We'll figure out all that stuff going that if we need a real ace at the trade deadline. But right now, like you pointed at, we have 7 or 8 guys, oh, maybe even 9 guys competing for a starting rotation spot. And although we don't have that headliner that is going to take the mound on opening day, we have guys that are going to keep us in games, and that's all we can ask for. So, like you said, we might be done on the pitching end, but that just means that we have to hone in on the bat that we're missing. And Juan Soto hinted at it too, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a great transition there. What's going to happen with Pete? Pete Alonso and Scott Boras trying to do Scott Boras things over the weekend. Putting out there that they offered the Mets a 3-year deal, and it seems like that's not true. you know, he's trying to put some pressure, some public opinion on his side. But the problem is that this ain't the old Mets. You know what I mean? All those first basemen signed, and Pete was still out there unsigned, knowing that the Mets wanted to do a deal with him, and now he's trying to get this deal with high AAV, and the Mets aren't having it. They're not going to bet against themselves, and at this point, that's what's happening. Stearns. Let me rephrase that. Cohen has a good relationship with Boris, but he's also a smart businessman, so he's not going to bet against themselves. He's leaving it all in the hands of Stearns, and obviously, he's going to get into the conversation when he needs to. I.e. a Soto, and things like that. But for the most part, he's going to stay out of it. Because he trusts in Stearns, and we should too. Because at the end of the day, I know we all want to win as Mets fans. We all want to win as Mets fans, but we can't have so many contracts on our books. Everybody says it's Steve Cohen's money. Yes, it is. But at some point, that's going to run out, in a sense that he's not going to want to waste his money.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it was pointed out to me. I don't remember where I heard it, but if you sign Alonso to that, high AAV deal that he's looking for, he's not only looking for because remember guys, the Mets offered him 3 for $90 at the beginning of the offseason. And so him coming back to the Mets and saying, I'll accept a 3-year deal, but not your 3 for $90 deal, that just means that he's looking for even more money. And if he's looking for like a 35 to 40,000 or $40 million a year kind of deal, then that's just not coming. Because he signs a deal like that, he's putting the Mets in a position that puts them over the highest tax threshold that you have to deal with the Cohen tax being in place now. And so it's a sticky situation, but I think all signs right now are pointing to the Mets need Pete Alonso, and Pete Alonso needs the Mets. This is a deal that's ultimately going to work itself out, but it feels like feelings are going to be hurt in the process, and that's just not what we want. We want Pete Alonso to feel cozy, but we also want him to understand his value at the same time. He is a valuable bat, just not where he's valuing himself right now. And maybe Scott Boras is kind of talking in his ear and hurting him a little bit when it comes to that. We know Pete Alonso loves New York. And I think at the end of the day, he has to remind Scott Boras that he works for him, right? He's the one that is the moneymaker here. And they're going to get this deal done because it was told to the media that Pete Alonso only offered this exclusive 3-year deal to the Mets, and so we know that he wants to stay here. But man, it's really going to if it prolongs any further, then I'm nervous to where it gets, and if it gets into spring training, we saw how it affects some of these players going into the season.
Well, and that's the thing. Even that report that you mentioned about the Mets offering 3 years, I don't know if that's even true. To be honest with you, because they're not going to bet against themselves. And right now, they might have offered that maybe to because of what you said, the relationship, but Walker got 3 years, 60, right? And so, and overall, yes, he's not the power bat that Pete is, but when you add the defensive value that Walker brings, he's an overall better player than Alonso is. And so I think Pete kind of told everybody what he wanted when he fired his agent and signed Scott Boras. And unfortunately, I'm what I'm hoping that players are starting to understand is Boras at this stage of where the MLB is at this stage, Boras is good for the top free agents, right? I.e., Juan Soto, guys like that. The second tier, he's not a good agent because he puts players in this situation. He puts players in situations where he's like you said, talking in his ear, because it seems like Pete wanted the most money he can get, and he's talking in his ear, trying to get all this money, and he's not going to get it at this point. The Mets might even pivot, and he might stay unsigned and sign a 1-year deal. I was in the spaces with the Mets cast today, and that's what they were talking about. Is Pete might end up with a 1-year deal somewhere else and be back in the market next year, because the Mets might pivot. Or not sign anybody at this point, because they got some young players that they can plug in and see what happens at the trade deadline, right? It's a long season. The season doesn't get you don't win the season before the season starts, right? You still got to play it, and so it might be one of those things that they might go into the season without Pete Alonso and without a first baseman, and see what happens down during the trade deadline.
Yeah, no, that's where I disagree with you though. And the reason being, one, they promised Juan Soto some protection, right? And they're going to pick up somebody, whether that's Alex Bregman or Pete Alonso or Anthony Santander. They're going to pick up somebody to offer him some protection in that lineup because right now they have Brett Beatty projected to play third base, Mark Vientos at first, Jeff McNeil at second, who could have a bounce back season, but who knows with that? And then all your outfielders are up for, or your center fielder. Is Tyrone Taylor and Jose Siri. So you don't know what you're getting there. You don't know what you're getting in the kid Francisco Alvarez. Mark Vientos is coming off of a great season, but you don't know what you're getting there again because it's his sophomore, technically. I guess not really, but technically his sophomore season. So there's a lot of question marks in the Mets lineup right now, and they need a sure bat. And although we can say that Pete Alonso is on the decline, and so is Alex Bregman, and Anthony Santander had a great season because of where he was playing. Um, these are all more of a sure thing than what the Mets have right now, and so that's why I think that a deal gets done with Pete Alonso specifically because no other team is going to sign him for the deal that he has right now because he was offered that qualifying offer. Um, uh, I don't think other teams are looking at him saying he's worth the second and fifth round pick for a 1 year deal. If he's signing with another team, 6, 7, maybe even 8 year deal, which if he was getting those kinds of offers right now, then he probably would have signed it by now. But no, is really offering him that long of a deal. And if he's signing a short term deal, what team is going to look at him and say that he's worth the qualifying offer or the draft pick compensation that they'll give up to the Mets because of that? And so, it gets done. But like I said, it's going to be messy, and I just don't like messy.
No, I don't like Messi either, but that's what happens when you sign a guy like an agent like Scott Boras. You get messy because either the organization gets over it a lot quicker than the player does because when it gets messy on the other side. So I will agree with you there, but when Scott Boras gets involved, it always gets messy because he's trying to get the most money for his player, and but this is a new era of baseball where he might have been able to do that 10 years ago, but teams aren't falling for it anymore for these second tier guys, and this is what's happening. It happened to Chapman and Montgomery and Snell last year, and it's happening to Alonso this year, where the teams are going to say, "We'll wait until you come down." or give us the deal that we want to give you, and it's screwing these guys over. And I understand that Stearns promised Soto, to get players, but none of the Stearns nor Cohen or even Soto said that was going to be this year. so I'm with you, because I I expect them to sign players, but nobody said we're just going to waste and throw money around just because we made a promise to Soto. No, they're going to do it the smart way, because Soto's going to be here 15 years. And so, they're going to want to build this the right way. And you can't have, all these contracts in all these places if guys are going to be clogging them up, because right now we got Soto, we got Lindor, we got Nimmo. You don't want to keep clogging up these contracts with guys. For example, Nimmo's contract kind of looks dicey right now because who knows if he's going to stay healthy for the duration of his contract. And right now, who knows if he's going to be healthy this year. He might be a DH this year. We don't know how he's going to, recover from the
Plantar fasciitis.
plantar fasciitis. We don't know how he's going to recover from that. And that's the thing with these contracts that unfortunately. Joe DeMayo said this in his podcast, I think last week. Free agency is about timing. And unfortunately for Pete, his timing was after Nemo. and if he would have signed, if he would have been the free agent a couple years ago like Nemo was, he would have gotten the bag. You know what I mean? But it was Nemo, and now because of that Nemo contract, and we don't know how that's going to age. Right now, it doesn't look well, and Pete's the one paying for it right now.
Yeah, no, it really makes you question if that deal that he passed up in 2022 when they offered it to him was a mistake because he was getting what uh, one 7 for 152 or something like that. That would have blown him out of the water of whatever he's getting now. And I'm gonna go back to one of the points that you said about him kind of clogging things up for the future. One of the reasons and speculations for the reason that this deal isn't getting done on a long-term deal is that they're looking towards the future in Vladimir Guerrero Jr. next year. And I mentioned it in a past podcast, and I'll mention it again. I don't think Pete Alonso puts us out of the equation for any of the free agents that are on the market for the next 5 years. Uh, Pete Alonso is a great bat that, yes, has taken a downward turn in the past couple of years. You sent me a graphic of Lucas Duda and Pete Alonso and their 2 year comparison for Lucas Duda's 2014 and 15 seasons, and then Pete Alonso's 22 and or 23 and 24 season. But I got to tell you, although those numbers look scary right now, I don't think that's the Pete Alonso that we're going to get for the next 10 years, next 6 years rather. Do think he plays baseball for the next 10 years, probably more as a DH later on in his life. But 2023 was a bad year for everybody. We saw a lot of people have their worst seasons because of how bad the team was playing, and their expectations were high, so that might have put even more pressure on them. 2024 was a season where, they he was playing in his contract year, and that probably put a lot of pressure on him. Where we saw him reaching for a lot of things, where he was trying to hit more for average than power, and I don't think that was good for him. And that might have been more coaches talking in his ear. And now I think going into these next few years, where he has, if he does sign with the Mets, he has Juan Soto to sign as to hit in front of him, and then like a Francisco Alvarez or someone, or Brandon Nimmo to hit behind him, offering him some of that sandwich protection. I think he has a much better year than years are than what the past couple of years were portraying. And that being said, if he continues to play well at first base, I don't think he's horrible defensively, and I think he can actually provide a plus a glove at that position. We saw the scoop raise, and we all know how great he is at picking up his teammates in that regard. But if you go down 4 or 5 years and you sign, or even 3 years, like they wanted to offer that deal for, you he goes over to DH, and then Vladimir Guerrero is transitioning, and this is that kind of Stearns philosophy where you don't have a firm DH, and you just have people that are floating the position and having some more off days. And so signing Pete for a longer deal or a deal at all right now doesn't clog up the position or anything for the next few years. If anything, you're becoming more like the Dodgers, where you're just creating more for yourself more depth. We saw them sign Hyun Kim just a couple of weeks ago, and who knew that they were on the market for another shortstop or another versatile player like that? Because they already signed Tommy Edman, they already signed Teoscar Hernandez, and you just see them continue to add. And I'm sure that they're going to keep on adding. And once you get to the trade down, they'll probably add another bat. And that's what these good teams do, is that they continue to add. They build off of their good players. They take the best players on the market, and right now, Pete Alonso is the best player on the market.
Well, yeah, that's because the market's pretty much gone, not because he was the best player on the market this year.
Well,
So I wouldn't go that far.
you fill a
But
lot of those holes at the beginning of the offseason, Pete Alonso was ranked right up there with the best hitters, and Alex Bregman.
Well, yeah, I mean, but it was a weak market. Other than Soto, it's been a pretty weak market. Soto, Teoscar, and then Pete, right? Because I put Bregman under Pete. But that's not really saying a whole lot because just because they're the best player on the market at that moment doesn't mean that they're a good fit for the team. And let me, guys, don't go nuts. Not saying Pete's not a good fit for the team. So I'm not. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just saying that just because the guy, let's say he was on another team, and he was the best hitter on the market, and there was nobody else, doesn't mean you sign him just because he's the only guy on the market. That's what bad teams do. They sign these guys just because they get desperate. God, I'm gonna put it to you this way. Look what the Giants have done, right? In football, I'm talking about the New York Giants. When Gettleman he signed, I forget the receiver. I did not want them to sign that receiver from Detroit. I forget his name now, and it was the wrong thing to do because he was the best receiver on the market that year, but he just wasn't a good one. And bad GMs do things like that, and I disagree in a sense that if we do sign Pete, that does take us. If we do sign Pete for more than 1 year, that takes us out of the Guerrero hunt because they're not going to sign the two guys for the same position, and because that means they're clogging up DH, and I don't think right now they want to clog up the DH because you got to understand Nimmo might be playing DH a bunch with his foot. So it's not the Nimmo injury may be a longer injury than we want to give it credit for. And so Nimmo might play a lot of DH this year because of that foot. So that means Soto might be playing a lot of left this year instead of right, which is probably the better position for him. But that might happen. So I don't see us going after Guerrero if we have Pete more here longer than 1 year. And at the end of the day, you know, I, we're talking about this year for the most part, and we could go into the season. I'm telling you, you don't want to accept it, and I understand why you don't want to accept it because you don't want to give up a Soto season. Um, but neither do I, because just because we don't sign somebody doesn't mean we don't get somebody in at the trade deadline. But I'm telling you, we might go into the season without having Pete on the or signing somebody else going into the season.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. First of all, Golden Tate was a horrible signing because
No, it wasn't. It wasn't Golden Tate. It was from Detroit. It was. I forget who the guy's name was, but it wasn't Golden Tate.
I thought that was Golden Tate. But anyway, that was a bad signing because he underperformed, right? It wasn't that he was signed for this deal and was expected to do stuff, and then he just didn't have anything else around him to be able to elevate his game. Not Golden Tate, whoever it was, he just underperformed, right? And so that
Yes, but that's the reason. That's the reason why you don't do it. Just because they're the quote unquote best person out there in that market. It's because of you need to foresee them underperforming. And I told you that year that guy was going to underperform, and he did. I did hated the signing because of that, and so you got to foresee that as a GM. Good GMs foresee that. You know what I mean? And it might be against what we like, but they got to foresee that.
yeah, no, I mean, listen, you could say that about any player in any sport. They said that about that Nets team that played a few years back. They had three superstars with KD, James Harden, and Ben Simmons, and they underperformed. and people wouldn't say that they wouldn't sign them again because they're a bad deal. You could say that about Juan Soto in the next 15 years, which people are already predicting that he's going to underperform and that deal is not going to be worth it. But at the end of the day, you build your team with players that have the ability to make something great happen on the field. And that could be Pete Alonso, that could be Vladimir Guerrero Jr., or it could be neither. We could go and sign Vladimir Guerrero Jr. next year, and we've seen his slumps in this early on in his career. His season in 2023 was not great. He performed really good this past year, but before that, it was really bad. He had a lot of swing and miss, and his strikeout rate was up. And maybe he works on that, and that was just a stepping stone for him to get better. But you never know with these players that you're going to sign. But I will say Pete Alonso is at least going to hit you 25 to 30 home runs. That's the bare minimum that he's been able to hit. And if you're looking at your rotation or your lineup, and you say we need some power in this lineup, then Pete Alonso can get that done. Because at the end of the day, Vladimir Guerrero could come. He couldn't. He might not come. There's going to be a lot of teams on in the market for him next year. But what is more of a sure thing is to sign Pete Alonso this year, because we already know that he wants to come back to the Mets. His legacy is going to be extended if he comes back to the Mets. And he's going to be more of a sure thing than the predictions that we get Vladimir Guerrero next year. Because guess what?
Oh,
Vladimir Guerrero is going to be so expensive. He's already asking for 30 mil a year. He's trying to blow out that the record for first base, and we already know that David Stearns is not going to overpay for a first baseman, and so he might already be out of the price range for us. And so I say go for the sure thing this year in Pete Alonso, because you know how he performs at Citi Field. We know that he gives you power, and you know that he wants to be a Met.
well, I mean, do we know he wants to be a Met? I mean, all these factors are I agree are part of it, and I'm not saying. I know where it did say we're waiting for Vladimir Guerrero. I'm just saying, because of the way it's dragged on, don't be surprised that we don't sign Pete. That's what I'm saying. It's not because I want to wait for Vladimir Guerrero. That's never a sure thing. Signing Vladimir Guerrero is not a sure thing. I'm just saying, because it's dragged on, because of the circus that Boris is trying to pull this past weekend, it might be that the Mets don't sign Pete because of all that. Pete might not be a Stearns guy. We don't know that. It might be Stearns that doesn't like Pete. That's all the thing. And the receiver that I was talking about with that I didn't want the Mets, the Giants signing, the New York Giants, was Kenny Galladay. Kenny Galladay was the receiver that I didn't want the Giants to sign, but Gettleman was desperate because he was the best receiver in that market, and that's what happened. He signed a receiver that wasn't going to be worth the money. And he proved that because you can't do that. You just can't give money away because it locks you up. I understand that there's no salary cap in baseball, but there is a cap in the sense that at some point, Cohen's going to say, I'm not going to spend the money because you're wasting it. He became a smart businessman. What did it come out that he made his clients over $5 billion this past year? Whatever stat that was, he didn't do that by being stupid and giving money away. All I'm saying is, don't be surprised that we don't sign Pete because of the way it's dragging out. And it's a sad, Tiki on WFAN was talking about his free agency when he was about to be a free agent, and how he said, the only reason that he signed with the Giants is he was a Giant. Everywhere else, nobody cared who he was unless he performed, right? And if he went somewhere else and struggled, nobody would have cared. He mentioned that his example was if he went to Arizona and performed maybe 1 2 years and then went downhill, nobody's going to remember who Pete is, right? And that's part of this, right? A guy, an ego the way that Pete has, right? He's the polar bear, and he signed Scott Boras, so he has an ego, that needs to be stroked. He wants his money, and unfortunately, he played his hand wrong by signing Scott Boras, and it might burn him, because he's valuable to us because we're the Mets, right? We're the Mets fan base, but he's not valuable to anybody else right now. I'll give you a prime example. DeGrom. DeGrom has barely pitched for the Texas Rangers. Is he going to be remembered if he doesn't pitch this year at all? Or if he just pitches this year and not next year? Is he going to be remembered as a Texas Ranger? No, of course not. He's going to be remembered for what he did with the Mets because he's valuable to us, right? He was valuable to us. Same thing's happening to Pete right now. And, just because we quote unquote need him, and I agree with you, we could use him in the lineup, even though we have a better lineup, right? Right now, we have a better lineup than we had last year because we replaced Pete with Soto. So we technically have a better lineup than we did last year, and we were a couple games from the World Series, right? I'm just saying, don't be surprised that we don't sign Pete. That's all I'm saying. Now, I'm not saying wait for Vlad because that's a whole thing, and I don't believe in waiting for players other than Soto because I did want to wait for Soto, but. No, but we were put in the position to wait for Soto, right? When Epler signed all these guys, it was kind of heading towards this free agency, right? Because the only guy we have in the books is Marte from all those signings. So that's all I'm saying. I'm just saying, don't be surprised that we don't sign Pete.
Yeah, no, we're gonna have to agree to disagree here. We'll leave it there because you're just gonna continue to hate on Pete, and I'm just not gonna stand for that on this podcast.
I'm not gonna stand on. I'm not gonna hate on Pete. It's not about hating on Pete. It's just about knowing your value. You said it yourself before. You got to know your value. But it's not hate. I love Pete. I love Pete. It's not about hating on Pete. It's just one of those things. At the end of the day, this is a business, and sometimes it's not going to happen. But you're right. If let us know what you're thinking. How do you feel about it? Do you agree with Victor and we're going to sign him anyway? Or you on my side and might think that things may not happen with Pete, or he's going to come at a really, really discounted price. Let's see. Let us know what you're thinking. But in other news for the Mets, we need some relievers, or at least one reliever. I don't think we need a lot. I think we just need one reliever, and one reliever we were tied to, Tanner Scott. It'd be a great 1-2 punch at the end of the bullpen there with Diaz. Because you can pick and choose who closes, right? If they're both getting paid at this point, I don't think saves matters as much as it did in the past because you're never, at this point, these guys aren't going to make it to the records, right? Kenley Jansen has a chance for a saves record, and nobody's signing him right now. So I don't think these guys at this point care about the saves record as long as they're getting paid like closers, right? So I would love to see the Tanner Scott signing. But again, I don't know if I'm all about paying them, because the market is getting hot, and I don't know if I'm about paying them 20 million a year uh, for a reliever.
Yeah, no, I don't know if that happens. Just because David Stearns does not like to play for relievers. We've known that. We've seen that in the past. He doesn't pay for these high leverage guys because he knows how volatile they could be. One day they can be lights out, and the next day they're giving up saves and home runs out the wazoo. And so I don't think that we're in on Tanner Scott because he's demanding so much, but maybe one of those other guys that are more kind of low key on the market. Tanner Scott is that highest paid or highest reliever on the market right now. But maybe we're looking at a guy like David Robertson, reunite with David Robertson because of what he was able to do for us. We know he can pitch in New York, and he still has it at his old age. Maybe we're looking at a guy like Kirby Yates. Kirby Yates has some decent stuff, and he's not a guy that's really talked about much. These are both guys that can be set up men for David Stearns. Sorry, for Edwin Diaz in the late, especially later in the year when we need guys like that. But this is another situation where we look at who's hot in this year and trade for a guy at the deadline. You know, Ryan Helsley, for all we know, can be up for grabs at the deadline and might be worth looking into once we get there later on in the year. But the one thing I will say that is attractive about Tanner Scott is that he's a left-handed lights out reliever, and that's something that we're missing in our bullpen right now. We need to. That's something that hurt us last year because we were scrambling at the end of the year, and we talked about it so many times. Who's going to get guys out like Shohei Ohtani? Who's going to get that Juan Soto out? Luckily, we don't have to worry about Soto anymore, but we're going to have to continue to worry about guys like Shohei Ohtani, Fernando Tatis Jr., all these left-handers that are dangerous. Actually, Fernando is a right-hander, but you know what I'm trying to say. There are guys that are going to Bryce Harper that are going to be dangerous for us, and if we don't have that lights out reliever, we saw the Padres pick up Tanner Scott last year and have him be just a specialty guy for Shohei Ohtani. We need someone like that, and the guy that I think is perfect for it, and that might come a little later in the year, but at a very discounted price, is someone that we've alluded to so much in this offseason, and that's Brooks Raley. He's still that lights out guy that's not going to cost you anything because he hasn't pitched in a year. And let's hope that we can get a guy like that because Tanner Scott's going to be way too expensive, and I don't see another left-hander that's really worth it out there in the market right now.
Yeah, no, for sure. The only one that I would say no on in that list that you talked about is Robertson. I know Robertson had a good year last year, but for his age, I just can't rely. Put money on a guy that at any moment could be done. Right? We did that last year with JD Davis. I mean, JD Martinez. JD Davis, JD Martinez, and what we feared actually happened. He got old on us. We kind of called it before the season, and so I'm out if it's David Robertson. All the other guys, I'm open to because you're right.
Same thing about Adam Ottavino too. He kind of went out on us, and we saw that going into the year. Because he didn't have a great campaign the previous year. It just depends on. He is old, so I can see why your hesitation there.
Yeah, it's one of those things that at any moment they can go, and so I'm not for it. And any other guys, I'll take. I am not. I'm not going to talk too much about the bullpen. I know people can go nuts about the bullpen, but at the end of the day, name me the top relievers on every bullpen. um, in other teams. Can you?
Yeah, I mean, look at what the Dodgers were able to do last year, and those guys were no names going into the season, right? Guys that were older that you didn't expect to be pitching in high leverage that late in the year. Shout out to Jonathan. Thanks for joining us. He says, "Hey, Victor and Hector." That's actually Franklin, and I'm Victor. Glad that you were able to get my name right, but. Yeah, no, I mean, there were, and then you see the teams that had those high leverage relievers, like the Phillies. They had all those high arms. They had, the Jeff Hoffmans, the shutdown relievers that didn't perform at crunch time, and so it really depends on the time of the year, and that's why I say let's wait till the trade deadline to acquire some a high leverage guy like that. But you're right. We have guys in our system right now that can play that setup role. Daniel Nunez is coming back, and he was lights out going into late into that year last year. But and in Reed Garrett at the beginning of the year, we found out that he wasn't, a setup man type of guy. But guys like that can pop up all the time. And then later in the year, you can even have your top prospects like a Brandon Sproat come back or Blake Tidwell and have them pitch in high leverage. And guess what? We talked about all of the starter depth that we have and going into the year. Some of those guys signed pre-arb deals where they avoided arbitration and might be back in the bullpen this year. Tyler McGill is hinted to be in the bullpen. Jose Budo, another guy that might be hinted to be in the bullpen again. And so we have guys that are able to fill the role right now. But I will reiterate, we don't have that left-hander that was really able to get us out of trouble. Danny Young is going to be back, but as far as we know, that might be all that we have as far as left-handers go.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's one of those things where you're right. We don't know. I do know Budo will probably be in the bullpen. That's, I think, what a given. Budo will be in the bullpen, and the bullpen is kind of shaping out. So that's why I'm saying I don't know if we might not sign another reliever. And going to Jonathan's point, we kind of touched in on the Pete stuff, but I don't see us signing Jose Iglesias. I think that Acuna is going to play that super utility guy. Because he can play all the infield positions, just like Iglesias has, and and he's got the speed off the bench and the youth, right? And so unless he gets traded, you know, um, I I don't see us signing Iglesias because where are you going to put him? One of the things that we need to figure out is we're going to put all these guys that we signed, right? In order to sign Jose Iglesias, that means Acuna's in the minors. And do we want that? I don't know about you, but I want to see Acuna get some run in the majors. We already know what he can do in the at AAA, and that wasn't good. His brightest light was shining in the major leagues. I'd rather him play all the positions. Give McNeil a break. Give Lindor a break, because at the end of the day, I know Lindor plays every day, but he's going to have to take some days off this year. He is going to be 31, so he's going to have to take some days off. Give some Vientos some days off, right? And I do think we're going to sign one more bat. Maybe a DH / outfielder to give those guys a rest, because we do need one kind of bat like that. Maybe that is Santander. I don't know, because he's open to doing a shorter term deal now. He's open to it, or at least that's what they put out, and we'll see about that. But as far as Iglesias, I don't think Iglesias is coming back to this team.
Yeah, no, I think the one thing that we have to remember with all these higher leverage bats is that they all come with that qualifying offer and those draft picks. Anthony Santander was offered the qualifying offer, and so we're gonna have to give up those draft picks. Same with Alex Bregman. The only one that we won't have to give up those qualifying offers with is Pete Alonso, and that's again, I'll reiterate. That's why I think he comes back. Ultimately, I don't think other teams are willing to do that. But you hinted at it. We're gonna pick. I think my bold prediction, and maybe not so bold, is probably not bold at all. Is that we picked one or the other. Either Jose Iglesias is coming back or Pete Alonso is coming back. And the reason why is because if we get Pete Alonso, you're right. There's no room for Jose Iglesias on this team. There's going to be too much of a clog. But if you sign Jose Iglesias and not Pete Alonso, then that gives you some more room for development. That gives you an opportunity to put more guys at first base. Jose Iglesias can work the horn. He can play all four positions if you really wanted to in that infield, but it still gives room for development for these other guys. And we saw how much that benefited a guy like Mark Vientos and even a Luis Angel Acuna last year in having that veteran presence in Jose Iglesias. So I do think that he does come back only if Pete Alonso doesn't come back. But I think it'd be so great for the culture for them both to come back. But we know that David Stearns is cold-blooded, and that might not be what happens. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a one or the other. I just don't see Iglesias coming back because of Acuna. I don't see us signing Iglesias because we don't sign Pete. I don't think that's going to happen either. We might get a stopgap first baseman because I do believe that they're going to let Vientos get a run at third base. I don't see them shifting him over to first base. I just don't think that Stearns was going to say that to the media because he wanted to sign Pete at that time. So he's not going to say, yeah, we're just going to move him to first. Sure, he's going to say that, right? But I think he's going to get a run at third base. It's one of those things that he did. We saw him in the beginning. He was kind of iffy. We were talking about it on the pod that Vientos was a little iffy at third, but throughout the season he got better and better, and he became an average third baseman. And I think he's going to get a run at third base. That's why the whole Bregman thought. I've never thought that was going to happen. I still don't think that's going to happen unless he wants to play second base. But again, we got McNeil. It's one of those things that I could see McNeil playing a super utility guy, but that's only if one of the young guys takes a spot. I don't think we're going to replace him with a guy that makes money as well, unless we trade him. McNeil is going to be on this roster unless we trade him. And we're not going to replace McNeil with somebody else that makes money because we got McNeil. The only guy that we're going to replace him with is one of the young guys, Acuna, Jet, Mauricio. Those are the guys that are going to replace McNeil. Just like the Yankees are trying to unload Stroman, we're trying to unload Marte, and it's not happening so far. Obviously there's still a lot of time before spring training, but we got to remember that we got these other guys on the roster, and we're just not going to keep adding guys and throw these guys to the side and throw money away. They're not going to do that. Not just willy-nilly. They'll eat money for a purpose, but not willy-nilly. You know what I mean? And so I just don't see it. I don't see Iglesias coming back at all. Even if we don't sign Pete, I don't see Iglesias coming back. Just because I do think that Acuna gets that run in the beginning of the season, and maybe even takes the job from McNeil, and McNeil becomes like super utility guy, because maybe not having to play every day might be better for McNeil. Who knows? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, at the end of the day, Acuna was great for the 2 weeks that he was here, but he's still a prospect. And we might not see it that way because he performed so well at the major league level. But he's going to have a chance to compete in spring training, but that doesn't guarantee him a job straight out of spring training. He could still get sent down to the minor leagues or even traded. And ultimately, I think that's what happens with Acuna. I don't see his future being full long term with the Mets. I think he gets ultimately traded for a piece maybe at the deadline or even before the season. And that could be with any of the guys that we're talking about, with a Brett Beatty, with a Acuna, with even a Jet Williams that we can see maybe, or Drew Gilbert maybe even this year. But because we have all these guys like Jeff McNeil and other guys that we are paying money to that can do the exact same thing. So we don't want to clog up the position, but we also don't want to not give these guys room to grow. And so my prediction is that they get traded rather than have a spot on this major league team. And if that is the case, then you can welcome back Jonathan, my and Nick Castellanos' MVP in Jose Iglesias. And I think that's a great move for us to do. And then and even if you trade multiple of those guys, then you welcome back other guys like that we can talk about later on in the year. But that's all speculation. There's still a little bit of off season left to talk about all of this, and I just we got to see them play in spring training. Is all I'll say. We got to see them perform.
Yeah, no, for sure, absolutely. And I'm not saying Acuna is going to be on this roster, but because I'm with you, we talked about it. We thought that Acuna would be a trade piece. So it's still time. There's still time for him to be a trade piece, depending on what's out there. But right now, I'm talking about the team right now. I see him as our utility guy for right now. Hopefully there is a trade because you're right. Beatty's out. Mauricio's the only one that I don't see having the opportunity to be traded because people want to see him get back on the field first and see him on the field. So, that's about it. But I do want to touch in on some other signings around the league, just to give it a shout out before we get out of here. Big shout out to Dom Smith for signing a minor league deal with the Yankees. And we're going to see our boy Jorge Lopez next year because he signed with the Nationals. So more power to those guys. It's a shame because it's crazy how we were talking about who's better, Dom or Pete, and we see Dom signing minor league deals with other teams. It's a little crazy how things happen, but that's what we're talking about. That's kind of why Victor's always saying, praise over prospects, is because you really don't know how these guys are going to pan out, and so it's you never know. There's a lot of offseason left. Hopefully we get resolution soon. Hopefully we get to see Pete back. I want to see Pete back. I know Victor tried to say that I'm bashing Pete and I don't want to see him back. That's not true. I want to see him back, but not at any cost.
Yeah, no, I mean, you were bashing on Pete. Can't go away from that. You said what you said. You forgot about another important signing that the Nationals made too, and Ahmed Rosario. So they're putting together a team over there of a former Mets, and they have a lot of young talent, so they're going to try to be competitive this year. But like you said, more moves to be made this year, this offseason. Let's hope that the Mets are involved in at least a couple more.
All right. So before we get out of here, guys, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and on replay, let us know how you're feeling. Let us know what you're thinking. Is Pete getting any type of deal? were we ever in the Sasaki run, or is this the rotation that we're going to go into the season with? Let us know how you're feeling. Let us know how you feel about Pete. Let us know how you feel about the reliever market in the comments, and give us your comments. Let us know how you feel. But before we get out of here, Victor, any last words?
Yeah, just addressing Jonathan's last comment. They're gonna throw it up. We're gonna probably have Marte DH some. Uh, um, um, we're gonna mix it up a lot. Franklin talked about Brendan Nimmo DHing, and then Juan Soto might get some reps in there. So it could be moved around a lot. We're going to see a lot of versatility, which I like. I don't like having a firm DH going into the year, but if anything, if we do sign an Anthony Santander, that could be looking like a full-time DH. That only happens if Marte goes, though. And so that's it, man. Let's hope that we can fill out this roster. And again, let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets. See ya.